I noticed when we were doing our test drive that my turn signal canceller wasn't working, and I found out the reason. I didn't have the horn stuff installed yet, so it's got these little detent things on there, and that's what works to hit the turn signal when you're going back. So we got that put on there. So I got the spring on there, and then this goes over the spring, and then there's a spacer that comes with this kit. Oh, this guy here, so that goes on there like that, and then the adapter, and then the cover. But what I've run into is this little guy here doesn't come through this spacer in a good enough spot to come out, or this little thing here just barely sticks out above the steering wheel. You can see that how it's got a step down right there. So the little part is supposed to go right into there, so it doesn't stick up any farther than that. But what I found is everything's not lining up, and this was a Grant kit, so I'm not sure why, but I'm just gonna have to take and notch this little piece out so it aligns everything up correctly. So I've got my little carbide tip bit here, and I'm gonna go and do that real fast, and I think that'll be fine once I do that. So we'll know shortly. Okay, that seemed to work fine. So now I've actually got canceller. That's kind of tricky to put on there. You almost got to hold your mouth just right to get, if you need to adjust for the steering wheel. And I might have to do that again once I get an alignment to make sure the steering wheel is actually straight. But when you take this nut off, that little spacer and all that stuff is all kind of in there. So you got to kind of hold your mouth just right and to get things lined. It wasn't too bad, but I could see where that could be a struggle for some. But so now I'll work on getting the horn button thing connected. I did have to cut the connector off this guy. It had a spade connector on it, but that wouldn't fit through the steering wheel, so we'll just have to re-terminate a connector on there, which is not a big deal. I'm not completely sure how this connects anyway. It looks like it might have a smaller type spade connector in there, so I'll get in there and check that out now. Okay, so the little spade connector that's on the wire in the kit plugs into the back of this part. This thing's weird though. I guess that's a rivet or something. I'm not familiar with that connector, but that's obviously got to connect to this. I'll just cut that off and put my own connector on it, but I don't know what they were going for with that unless I'm missing something. So that I took these little bolts out here because this will sit down over those, and then the spring should just sit on this, and then when you put the horn button on there, it kind of just hooks to this and just kind of pulls this up, so it just kind of hovers itself over that spring, and it's kind of centered on there, and then the bolts here keep that from wobbling around. But and instructions aren't real clear, and they also came with this little pen size. I mean, it looks like something out of I don't know if you can see that, well, pen. But that looks like it's supposed to go clear down at the base of the column where the little grounding button comes out. So, which this steering column already has that in there. So, I assume I don't need that. I guess the horn doesn't stop moving or honking, then I'll know I did something wrong. But I think that's all there is to it. I did this years ago, but it's been so long that the instructions have been copied over, so they're not very clear, but I think that's it in a nutshell. So we'll get it hooked up here and check it out. Okay, I guess it helps if I actually read the instructions. So these little pieces that come with this kit are, so if you didn't have an aftermarket steering column like I have, you'd need these to adapt your factory steering column to this kind of horn button. So this thing goes down in the steering column, so it would be the same as this wire. And then this little plastic tab and spring are all to go on the factory tab, which I'm pretty certain I don't need, and I just lost it. So what I'm going to try to do is go through my kit and see if I have a spade connector that will fit on here, and then I can just put the spade connector right on that and get rid of this little wire. But that's such a weird little connector, I might have to still figure out how to still put a splice, which I hate to put a butt connector inside here. There's not a lot of room, but anyway, I'll see what I can come up with. So it turns out I don't have that small of spade connector in my arsenal, and I got to thinking, if this size of spade had been on this wire that I cut off, it would have fit through the hole. So maybe I don't know, maybe they just shipped the wrong one or whatever. But so what it is, I just cut that off, cut the length off of the one with the funny bell connector on it, just cut that off, and then just soldered it together here in the middle. And then I've got some shrink tube here I'll put over that. So I think that ought to work fine for what this is. Well, I can't say I love the way this fit. The wire was a little longer than I liked it to be. Kind of had to go up around, but there's plenty of room inside there, I think. I don't think I'll have any problems, but I guess, you know, if I really get a lot of road rage, maybe I could wear something out in there. I don't know, but it does seem to be working. This thing, I snapped it on good the first time and it popped back off. Seems to be working now. There's just not much that holds this button on. It's just these little indents that kind of grab that plastic piece. So I guess it is what it is. Probably a pretty cheap part to make, but I can hear the relay clicking. I don't know if you can hear that, but I can. Don't have horns yet, but nice thing is that the relay's not sticking on, so so that's good. I think that'll work. Now that the horn button's installed, I needed to come up with what I actually wanted to put on here for horns. I was debating, you know, I wanted to find a 4-horn system, like off an old Lincoln or a Cadillac. I always thought those sound the best, but they're getting pretty hard to come by, and unless you're doing air horns, I don't think you can really buy a 4-horn, you know, the regular mechanical style. And I do have air horns, but they just take up so much darn room, and I don't know if I love the sound of that anyway on an old car. I'm not doing the Rugo horn. This is the wrong era for that. That'd be more appropriate, you know, for something from the 20s or 30s. I always thought it was kind of cheesy to put one of those on a later vehicle. So what I ended up doing is buying a set of these FIAM, I don't know how you say that, but they're model 74-100. And I put these on my Toyota Camry a long time ago because those horns were shot. Actually, they'd filled full of gravel, which is really weird. Anyway, I really like these. They're, geez, 15, 20 bucks. I don't know. They're not very expensive, but they've got a real good American car sound to them, and they're insanely loud. So I just mounted them here on these 2 bolts for the new tilt hood bracket, and these little brackets come with it. The instructions kind of stink. It doesn't show running. It comes with this grounding wire, but it doesn't show actually which terminal to put it on, or if you even need to install it. So when I first put the horns in, I just, you know, made sure it was grounded to the bracket, and then ran a feed to here, because my thought was like, oh, these, you know, this one's to tap into the other horn. Well, it didn't work. I checked my ground. It was good. It was getting hot. It was getting positive to the spade connector there. They weren't working, so I was like, well, I'll put the ground on. If I fry them, I fry them. Well, you do need the ground from wherever to the other spade, and I'm guessing it doesn't matter. It probably just energizes the coils in there, and they would they're not labeled which side's positive, so I just picked one, and I don't think I'm guessing it doesn't matter. The instructions were terrible, as are with a lot of this kind of cheap Chinese stuff, but anyway, so that's how I hooked them up. I just teed the wire, the horn feed from the painless wiring kit. I just soldered cut the wire in anyway. Obviously, one each horn. And I don't know if you'll be able to hear this very well through the phone, but this gives you an idea what they sound like. Said a good American sound there. Not a high-pitched beeping or nothing, so I like it. It'll be fine. Like I said, it's nice and loud. Not quite what I like I said. I like the 3 or 4 horn setups. It just sound more full. But maybe one of these days I'll pick one up at a swap meet, or set at a swap meet, or online or something. But these will work for now. I don't plan on honking that much, but they'll definitely hear me if I do. So I'm going to replace my fuse that I put on the ECU feed with this fusible link wire that I picked up. So the original feed is 16 gauge, so you go on to use 4 gauges above that for your fusible link size. So 16 will take a 20 gauge fusible link. So here's another factory one that's right next to my power block. I'm not sure what this one feeds, but it's something else on the car. Could even be the same thing, just another link. But I noticed that when from the factory, this is only taped about to here, and this is exposed in the wire loom, so you can find it. Obviously, that catches on fire, kind of goes to smoke when or melts when it blows. So you don't want it wrapped in your wire loom, which is good. So I've kind of guesstimated my length based on this other factory one. So there's my length I'm going to use for the ECU feed. And I'm just going to use butt connectors to install it. These are supposed to be like flame retardant or whatever as well, but I'm not too worried about this bursting into flames if that fusible link goes. It usually burn out here in the middle or something anyway, so I think that'll be fine. So I'll get it cut and spliced in there to make it fit right through here, so both these fusible links will be right next to each other if I ever have to be visually looking for what's wrong. Fusible link is installed, so here's my new one here. Drops down, feeds from that rather. So that'll work. And like I said, here's a factory one here that's going to probably alternator, would be my guess. And I got mine here. That thing covers a lot of it, but at least I'd know where to look. Like I said, if we had a problem, but I doubt they'll have a problem. This Mustang's had those on there forever too, so I imagine that's not going to be an issue. Working on a silly little project here for the coolant overflow container. I've seen this at car shows and stuff. Guys use mason jars and whiskey bottles and stuff, so I like the whiskey bottle idea. My favorite whiskey is 40 Creek. I know a lot of people like Jack Daniels, and that's good too. But I found a piece of pipe here, exhaust pipe, whatever. This is a intake off an old D4, and that bottle fits in there just under the rim enough that I think that I can then take and splice a piece of rubber around here, fuel line, to act as an anti-vibration, but I think it'll actually take up all the space, so that'll be a nice snug fit. And then I'll notch all this out so you can actually see the bottle and I can see what the level is. But before I get to that, I'm working on the tubing that goes in the bottle. So I'm using 1/4 inch brake line here, left over from the other stuff. I'm just working it through the vise here so I can get a decently straight piece. 2 straight pieces to go into the bottle through the cap. I've seen some guys don't vent these, but I don't think that's a good idea. I'm going to put 2 down. One will be the feed from the radiator, and the other one I'll run out and to a spot that if it overflows, it can drip on the ground, because I wouldn't want this to overfill and pressurize. You know, I don't feel comfortable with that. It's not rated for that. So just to be on the safe side, I'm going to run it in and out. And I think that should be fine. I assume that the overflow will just be a short tube here towards the top, and then the other one will go to the bottom, so it could suck this dry if it needed to, or just about to the bottom. So so this will go in there. I think I'll just epoxy it to the cap, and then flare the end just to give it a little bit of a rib for the hose to seal over. And so we'll see how this goes. Here's what I come up with. So it's just that line, and then I use my fancy flaring tool, which I don't think you'd necessarily have to flare these, but I can, so I did. So here's my overflow, here's my radiator connection, and then down at the bottom I just notch this. That way I can drop the tube all the way down, if I can get that to focus, all the way down to the bottom of the bottle, and it won't, vacuum suck itself down to the bottom, which probably couldn't happen, but now it definitely can't. And then I did originally try a hose clamp on this, but it just wouldn't fit into the bottle head. There's just not enough room. But I don't think I'm even going to bother epoxying this. It gives me a little bit of flexibility to turn these heads around. And if if a little coolant leaked out through that, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But it drops right in there just like that and screws on. So I think that'll work. So now the next thing I got to work on is the mount for this guy. So we'll tinker on this guy and see how that comes out. Making a little more progress here. What I've done is welded some little tabs on this bottom piece. I'm going to weld into there, and that will fit the bottom of the bottle nice and tight. And then this guy is going to go over that, and then we'll just be able to weld that bracket onto there, and that'll keep the bottom nice and snug. And then we got the rubber along the top here, which I'll use some weather cement. I ended up putting a little thicker piece here because it was still just a hair loose, so I think that'll work well. Got the window part of it notched out, so that'll give me plenty to weld as an attachment back there. And then this just fits right in there like that. And then I'll put the rubber around here once it's all painted again, and that ought to give it a nice, I think anyway, a nice tight spot to sit. That's what I've ended up with that for that bracket. Basically just, you know, round piece of pipe with a flat piece welded to it. Nothing special. Feels plenty heavy duty, which is nice. So I'm going to mount that right in here against the radiator. Drilled a new hole there in the shroud. Used another existing one. So I'm hoping the hood clearance is fine, which I think so. I've dropped it down enough that it's kind of snuggled just above the cooler and away from the filter stuff, oil filter stuff. So I think that's going to work. So I'll get some paint on there and glue on the weather stripping and all that stuff and go from there. Here's what I ended up with. I think it came out pretty good. I added a copper wire there on top just to keep it, in case a guy hit a bump or something, to keep that from bouncing out of there. But it's in there really firm. I don't think I'll have a problem with that. It fits in there nice and tight. I might have to pull the hoses off in order to take that cap off to refill it. Time will tell on that. I can maybe twist the bottle and leave that. I don't know, but that could be annoying down the road. We'll see. I did have to get rid of the red plastic covers off those horns. They were hurting my eyes. I just couldn't deal with it. So they didn't really do much anyway. It kind of protects that wire, and it looks like a little vent or something here, but I think we can live without that. But no, I like it. I'm a little concerned with the capacity of it. I don't know how much a guy should have for an in and overflow bottle. I ran lots of rigs that didn't have them at all for years, so I guess some is better than none. But so we'll give it a go and see how it works out. Well, I finally installed my Tach. Kind of been putting it off because I've been so apprehensive about drilling holes in the dash. But I finally decided that I've always wanted to do this, and there's lots of other holes in the dash anyway, like these all down here. So not like this thing's a virgin dashboard anyway. So I went ahead and did it. This is the Moon Eyes Tach that I bought at the Hot Rodorama or Hot Rod Rama, whatever it was called, in Pendleton this year. So, and that's supposed to come back next year. If anybody's looking for a really awesome car show in the Northwest, I think they call it Hot Rod Orama Northwest now instead of just Hot Rod, because they're thinking about doing one in the Southwest or Southeast or something. So I'm thinking Arizona or something. Anyway, decided about the Tach. Didn't really want to drill holes, but I did. So I drilled 2 holes, one for the wire, and then I also installed a grommet, and then of course the Tach mount. This Tach was designed to go on a steering column, so this piece here wasn't flat. I put it in a vise and flattened out as best I could. It's a little wonky, but nobody's ever really going to notice it. And then I found a kind of a half thick, I don't know what half thick means, but piece of rubber pad there like that to put under that. Not super thin, but something that can kind of absorb that little bit of a wave I put in that thing. And then also it you know, it grips the dash a lot better, not going to be spinning and vibrating so bad, I hope. So anyway, I really like the way it came out. It looks good to me, and sure looks good all lit up at night. I don't have a speedometer cable yet, but hopefully I will soon. I think I need a 7/8 to 5/8 or something like that. Anyway, Tach looks good. Let's see what it looks like when I fire it up here. I think I'm going to dig that. And here's how it looks in a little bit better light. I'll step outside here and show you. And then also, this was in the back of the Mustang, so it's a pretty nice little wool blanket, so I went and threw that on the seat to cover up the tear for now anyway. Here's how we're looking from the outside. I always thought these looked cool, so old gasser race car style, so I think I'm gonna dig that.